Welcome, one and all, to Enlightened Conversations, where this season we're going just that little bit deeper and not skimming on the judgy surface of life. I will also be sharing conversations with my guides, and you can be guaranteed that all the topics that come through are authentic, life-changing and enlightened, because we want you to live a more joyful, peaceful and loving vibration. Let's go. We are the midwives, birthing a new world. As we evolve our archetypes within, we are not only transforming ourselves, but ushering in new frequencies for the entire collective. Each shift is a birth, a sacred passage from old patterns into higher expressions of being. Hi everyone, it's Michelle Lightworker here, and welcome to Season 7 of Enlightened Conversations. Today we are diving into archetypes and their energy as a evolution, something a little bit different and unique, because often we look at archetypes as if they're static or fixed. But what if they weren't? What if the warrior, the healer, the mystic, and even the victim are living energies, shifting and evolving as we do? In this episode, we're exploring how archetypes transform when they're viewed from the 6D lens of unity consciousness. So today, we're stepping into something truly potent, the evolution of archetypes. Because what if the roles we've been playing aren't static at all? What if they're alive and evolving within us? In this episode, we're exploring how archetypes, these symbolic patterns that we've known through mythology, psychology, spiritual traditions, tarot, are living morphic fields of consciousness. Living morphic fields of consciousness. They're not just tools we use, which we often just see them as. I need to integrate my inner warrior so I can be strong, or I need to become more in touch with the inner healer within myself so that I can evolve myself to help others. They're not just tools we use. They're energies that we liberate. And when we evolve with them, within ourselves, integrating those aspects, you could say, we impact, here's the thing, we impact the collective field in a profound and multidimensional ways. These ancient symbols aren't just patterns that we even inherit generationally or in our family of origin, where we're just sort of pigeonholed into a role. They're living, intelligent fields that shift and expand and even liberate alongside us. And this becomes especially evident when we tap into this frequency of unity consciousness, what some might call 6-dimensional or 6D awareness. If you've ever identified with an archetype, like the healer, the warrior, the comic, the mystic, the joker, the mystic, and ever wondered whether you've been bound to that role forever, or if you've noticed those roles dissolving or transforming within you, then this episode is going to shed some serious light. Let's start by challenging a common assumption: archetypes aren't static. Archetypes aren't static. We often view them as fixed, timeless blueprints. But what happens when they begin to evolve? In the organic unfolding of consciousness, what are the long-term effects of this archetypal evolution? Well, in the previous episode, I introduced 6D as a framework for consciousness, and today I want to swim a little deeper into it. Some potent themes are beginning to surface, and not only that, but I do feel that there's a lot to offer in different topics along the way from 6D to 12D as well. So anywho, back to this episode. From the lens of our unity consciousness, if we are all intrinsically connected, then perhaps as we evolve and integrate our own archetypal energies in more balanced ways, become more whole, you could say, we also free the archetypes to evolve. Yes, what an interesting concept. So this is a multi-dimensional inquiry, one that invites us to move beyond the static view of archetypes. And while they're often framed as timeless or universal structures like in Jung theory, in psychology, from a 6D perspective, archetypes are alive, fluid, conscious, and interdependent with our own evolution. So let's have a little look into what archetypes are. Well, we've often heard the archetypes are fixed universal patterns. Think of Jungian philosophy, the tarot, mythology, astrology, the healer, the hero, the rebel, the mother. These archetypes shape how we understand ourselves and the world. And yes, they are universal, but they are not static. From a 6-dimensional or 6D perspective, what I call unity consciousness, archetypes are energetic intelligences. They're symbolic fields of frequency that serve as mirrors, teachers, and co-creators on our soul journey. They are both templates we incarnate with or tap into, and living morphic fields that shift as we shift. They're organic fractals of source consciousness, expressing particular functions like the mystic, the trickster, the warrior, the crone. You could say that they are polarized because they are fixed in their own identity or archetypal gift, talent. And so we can access those things and integrate them and become more whole and feel more integrated and less in a role, so to speak. So let's talk a bit more about what happens when archetypes evolve. Because we know, or hopefully we know, and I will discuss it a little bit later, but we know that we can tap in to these archetypes. They can help us feel more whole, feel more balanced, feel less polarized, feel less like we're acting from a caricature self into more of a balanced being. But what happens when archetypes evolve? Well, here's the thing. It's quite curious, but as we heal through our trauma and our illusions and distortions, and we change our perspective around an archetype, we actually liberate its deeper essence. For example, let's talk of how some archetypes might evolve from one archetype into potentially another archetype too. So the wounded healer could transform into the empowered medicine woman, where once they were continually needing to help others to feel like they were of purpose, they then transition into an empowered medicine woman who functions from a place of empowerment rather than woundedness. Another example, the martyr becomes the sovereign alchemist, where once they were abandoning themselves in search of feeling that they were worthy, they become a transformational presence of independence. Another example, the shadow masculine warrior, where once they thought they needed to be polarized in the element of war, fighting, shutting people down, they could soften as they integrate more into their wholeness and become the archetype of sacred protector. They're leveling up. They're softening and they're leveling up their energy from war to embodiment of the sacred in a protective way. They become the chalice holder of the divine feminine. So therefore, they work in harmony rather than in war and defiance of energy. So when this happens, the interesting thing is that the more, you could say the collective, just as an example, the collective masculine warrior, shadow masculine warrior, integrates into more of the sacred protector of the divine feminine. The more they do that, this is not just a personal or an archetypal upgrade. It is a collective one. So that archetype is more available. Every time you evolve an archetype within yourself, that higher expression becomes more available in the collective field. How awesome is that? Every time you evolve an archetype within yourself, that higher expression becomes more available in the collective field, more potent. More people can access that frequency. The archetype itself becomes more free. Wow, it's a pretty awesome thought, isn't it? And let's talk about this process of how these archetypes evolve inside us. There's two ways they evolve. They evolve consciously through awareness and choice, and there's different ways we can do that. And they also do evolve subconsciously through life initiation and emotional integration. Might not be conscious of them, but if we looked back over time, we could say, oh yes, I was definitely that archetype in that way. I was polarized, and look how I've changed. So there's that. Here's a few different ways that we can consciously, through our awareness and choice, evolve these archetypes within us. Well, firstly, there's the identification process. It's observational, really. It's scientific. You realize, oh wow, I've been acting out this pattern. I've been really sounding like this particular way. And then you become aware that that archetype could be the victim or the martyr or the workaholic or the comic of the family or the joker. And so you recognize, oh, okay, I realized an observation. Oh, I'm in a pattern of, this behavior. And maybe this shift becomes the moment you name it. It's very powerful to name something. It's surprisingly powerful to name something. When you observe it without judgment, when you just observe the pattern and you say, I recognize I'm doing this. Very liberating. So there's inquiry as well as a second conscious way we can evolve these and integrate these archetypes, become aware of them to help them evolve. So we can dialogue. We can sit down and have an empty chair or pop a beanbag on the floor or pillow on the floor next to you, or have a visualization if that's your thing. Not necessary though. And you can ask the archetype that is you, that you see is playing out. What do you need? What do you need? Let's start listening to what they need. Actually listen. You might need to journal it if or record it on your voice recording just to help you remember, because sometimes you go deep into these things. We don't always remember everything. You can ask the questions, what are you protecting? Because sometimes we are protecting something that's, we're feeling vulnerable. So therefore we want to protect it. We can ask it, what's your higher expression? Or what's your purpose? Or what's your gift? Those are really powerful questions. And if we feel like we're not getting anywhere, if we feel like they don't know what they need, they don't know what their higher expression is, they don't know what their purpose is, they don't know what their gift is, we'll start simple. Just ask them how they're feeling. Because there is an energy around archetypes that is polarized. And that polarization is helpful when it comes to asking them how they're feeling. So that's another way in to consciously assist the archetypes within us to evolve. The third type is a behavior shift, a conscious choice and behavior shift. So instead of reacting from the pattern, you respond from your soul. You might want to engage your higher self or other aspects of you or other archetypes of you that also you're familiar with to help you, to support you. So instead of reacting from a pattern, you respond in a conscious way. So if you're coming from the, say, the rebel, that's a good example for an archetype, you can choose aligned disruption, not chaos. You can choose to respond to a situation that you might be feverishly wanting to create chaos around, with thinking about how it can work with your higher self and a higher purpose, and respond from an aligned disruption. Still be in integrity, still be in your truth, still be in a potential no to a situation, or a this way instead of that way for you is what you need to do, way of approaching the choice at hand or your response at hand. And sometimes that can take a minute, especially if you are at the beginning of integrating. This could take a minute. You might need to go, just need a minute to myself, and I'll let you know. Or I'll call you back. Give me 5, or give me 20, or I'll think on that one. I'll let you know. You can actually take a bit of a time out, and that helps you because your brain and your neurons are wired so fiercely to these polarized archetypes, especially if you've been acting them out for a while. And here's another example of conscious choice and behavior shift. So the addict seeks devotional connection, not escape. You know, when you're feeling compulsive and you want to act on that addiction, you know you're needing something. So you intentionally seek divine connection and devotional connection. You intentionally call in and anchor in all your higher resources at that moment as a choice, as food, or as the higher vibe that you want to feel. You anchor in that way. Another example, the wounded healer. A pattern disruptor would be setting boundaries and choosing reciprocity where you've got an alignment with a give and flow from a relationship as well. Not necessarily feeling that you are unworthy and need to help all the time in order to feel like you're enough. And setting boundaries, setting limits with your time. Very good. Extremely, profoundly healing for the wounded healer. There's just a few little examples, but you know, when you actually just want to research how can this archetype that I identify with, how can they, what behavioral shifts can they do? When you start to research that, there's a lot. So we won't cover all of them. The fourth thing that you can consciously do to help evolve these archetypes is have this embodiment of a higher frequency. You become willing to embody the evolved form of the archetype intentionally and fluidly. It becomes a tool, not an identity. You call on it and say, thank you for your lesson that you taught me, and going to that extreme. But yes, and I now need to integrate this other aspect, and you become happy to work from that framework, but not just that framework, not just that archetype. You actually start to weave through others, and you start to yourself feel more fluid and less statically anchored in that automatic program. Let's call it a polarized program. So that's a few different ways, and how subconsciously we evolve these archetypes. Well, firstly, repetitive cycles. Number one, you might find yourself in this loop, in the same relationship dynamics, same self-sabotage, same burnout, and eventually we hit rock bottom with those things, and it's too painful, like the pain to continue in the toxic relationship or the sabotage or the burnout. It just becomes too much, and we have a bottoming out, and that tension forces transformation. And so subconsciously, those repetitive cycles that are polarized will eventually wear us down. The good news is we don't have to wait for that to happen. That's the good news. The common sense news is that those repetitive cycles eventually do break down our resilience, and that tension of pressure, that toxicity and that heaviness forces the transformation to happen, a breakthrough rather than a breakdown. We might find that another way subconsciously that we are able to, even without conscious awareness, evolve these archetypes is through a trauma or a crisis or a catalyst that can actually prompt this transformation. So, you might find there's illness can wear us down, loss, grieving, the grief process can be extremely taxing. Betrayal, where we're absolutely horrified that something has happened that we never thought would happen. Those kind of things can collapse and shatter a dysfunctional archetype. And there's another key to this as well. So if we have this sort of savior complex, we might find that there's kind of like a death, like an internal death, when we realize that we're forced to receive instead of give. That's a huge catalyst example. Or the performer archetype dissolves when burnout breaks the mask, for instance. They're examples of how the roles themselves can be so toxic that they can just bring us to the point where we need to shift. Then we've got the third subconscious thing that can occur is we find ourselves with our subconscious speaking to us in different ways. It could be through dreams. It could be through symbols that are meaningful to us in certain ways and they just keep appearing. It could be synchronicities, meeting people that we know would be helpful with something we've just know we're struggling with. And archetypes evolve as we decode the inner myth of the archetype as well. When we start to realize, we call bullshit on that you're the be all and end all of running the show, if you know what I mean. And I'm not saying let's all mistreat our archetypes, but I'm saying yeah, but no, you don't have all the answers. And also in dreams, within the dream itself, there's archetypes everywhere. And when you're witnessing a dream play itself out, and you wake up the next morning and you write it down, you can see what the dynamics are going on within you and how you felt about each of those dynamics and how they were working together or not working together. And you can really find there might be, especially if there's a death in the dream, the dreams may show that the archetype of figure is dying or transforming or merging. And this is evolution in motion. It's like your psyche, your subconscious is integrating through your dream. And the power of seeing something like that unfold is amazing. And not for everybody. Not everybody can remember their dreams. But if you are wanting to break a pattern, then why not ask for it to be shown in your dream and see if you can remember it? Why not? Why not bring that subconscious stuff to your conscious mind before you go to sleep? Then also the last thing we can help with these shadow integrations evolving subconsciously is somatic release and nervous system healing. So we might look at an archetype as something that's just our personality on a soul level or on our subconscious level or in our psyche, whatever. But no, they actually do live in our body. And potentially you might find that they live in a particular place more than other places. It might be that the martyr lives more from their solar plexus chakra because it's getting empowerment through feeling needed and get empowered. Or you might find the victim is collapsed in their base chakra because they just don't feel safe. Anyway, that's down near your pelvic region. But archetypes also live in the body through stored trauma, and they can keep the archetype in freeze mode as well. So when you have a trauma and you respond and you kind of freeze into that archetype, and that's just your modus operandi or your robotic response, that's how I just do life now. I disappear, I'm invisible, or like the lost child archetype, or I'm the funny comedian and I've just disappeared into my voice and I can't shut up and I'm just blah 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 blah. And that's it. No walls of words, walls of funny words. So what we can do is we can do some somatic work through breath, movement, touch, release, etheric, diving in and exploring. There's so many different ways. We've done that in this Enlightened Conversations series, where we feel like we can just dive in and swim around it and have a look and see what's going on. If there's a memory, what we need, what we need to let go of, have our resources come in and vacuum the stuff out, have our other angels or other resources that we know of, fill that space, call on archetypes that we love, Buddha, Jesus, fill the space that we have the trauma in, and then liberate ourselves from that trauma. That's really important work. And a lot of us are doing that and not realizing how powerful that is in terms of elevating and evolving these archetypes. Both paths, unconscious or conscious, both paths feed each other. You realize that you might consciously realize that you're stuck in the wounded feminine, and then weeks later a breakdown in your relationship forces a new way of being. There's a great conscious subconscious marriage there that just happened. Or a dream might show the old king archetype dying and you wake up with a deep knowing, I'm done being in control all the time. Or subconscious work and conscious awareness dance together, because it's that whole when your vibration is ready to change, you attract the solution. And often the solution will come in an unconscious form. It will just come to you and you go, oh wow, how did that happen? How did I get offered that job when I was ready to let go of being the martyr in my old job? And I've been given this completely different role that helps me expand my inner protector of people instead of, trying to save people. There's a big difference. You could be in a very enlightened role of protecting those that need protection to serve the world rather than save people from being victims. So practices that we can call on to support archetypal evolution as well are lots of things, like you can do parts work or internal family systems recovery. You can do shadow work. You can do mirror work. You can do the active imagination, like the dialoguing with the archetypes that we talked about. Guided meditations and regressions can help. You've got the somatic therapy and intuitive movement. You've got symbolic rituals, burning old roles, embodying new ones. Some of my students in the past have written down all those things that we discussed, like what do you need, what do you want, how's this serving you, what's not working for you anymore. Lots of questions for the archetype so we can actually let go and like burn those pieces of paper and feel that we're liberating those archetypes. And we can also use archetypal tarot or astrology as reflection tools and allow ourselves to begin a learning on what program we're running, if we're running a holistic program or if we're really running a very polarized program at the moment. And in order to do that, we have to educate ourselves on what those polarized programs are, right? Because you don't know what you don't know and you can't integrate what you don't understand. So getting the understanding helps with the noticing and the observation and the conscious awareness and the integration. So what can happen over time within us too is that, just like the archetype itself, when we're finding our own polarized archetype begin to become a little bit less polarized, it can happen that the different archetypes begin to merge. So many archetypes like light and dark, masculine and feminine, victim, persecutor, hero, villain. As consciousness evolves, these dualities begin to merge. So you might have the divine feminine, the divine masculine. They stop being opposites. They become one intelligence in a dual aspect. And so then we're less split and we're more in the one intelligence of knowing what's appropriate in each situation, rather than I really need to anchor more into my feminine in this situation because I'm really polarized over here in my masculine. And it becomes a little less like that. So it becomes a little bit more unconscious in a very balanced way. The victim and the persecutor might alchemize into the liberator or the wise witness. So therefore, you're not unaware that there might be some disempowerment around you or what have you, but you're able to be a force that doesn't go into victim, polarize itself, or allow itself to be oppressed. So you then have the liberation aspect, and the wisdom there is the witness of the actual abuse that might still be happening, and you're able to name it, understand it, also not be tied to it or victim to it, and therefore, boom, voila, victim and persecutor awareness, alchemization is there. You're not fighting the persecutor and blaming the abuser, but you're still not letting that behavior allow yourself to be oppressed. So instead of these like karmic loops that we can get caught into, especially with like people that hold that other extreme of the archetype with the victim persecutor role, which we do see a lot in domestic violence relationships, instead of having that kind of enter this different karmic resolution, because we are not reacting from the wounds, we begin creating from source. We begin not controlling the narrative, but like embodying the narrative, like we're the whole. So therefore we don't attract the lack. We're the whole person, not the whole as in a dug a hole. We're the whole person, so therefore we attract the solution, because we attract wholeness. When there is lack, we attract the opposite. We attract the polar, because the dynamics of the universe call for this yin and yang balance. So therefore, while we hold the balance, we then attract more balance. We then attract more evolved archetypal people holding those same energies, those same frequencies, all close to them, or closer to them. And also what happens is that archetypes stop acting through us unconsciously. So because we're bringing awareness to unconscious archetypes, like these ones, like the saboteur, the addict, the victim, the prostitute, they stop running. They stop running us from the shadows. They stop taking us in places that we can't believe we've gotten ourselves into again. But everything was going so well. Why did I sabotage things? But I was sober for such a long time. Why did I pick up a drink? Why do I always sell myself short? And that can be in any situation, not just sexual. As the prostitute, that part of ourselves that just does not feel like we can get anything unless we sell something of ourselves. And they stop sort of like not only hiding in the shadows, but jumping out in front of us when we're just making those breakthroughs, because we're more aware of them. And once we've seen them with love and understanding and why they're polarized, there's massive transformation in that. And they become our conscious allies. They become our inner guardians. They become our mentors rather than manipulators. They're able to say, hey, you know what? This is around about the time I might sabotage you, but I'm really getting that, yeah, we're worthy. And they might start to come on board. And the addict might say, oh, I really feel like it, yeah, that'd be great temporarily, but I've learnt it's not. I'm so grateful that I don't do that, and I don't feel the need to do that all the time anymore. Maybe occasionally, but hey, isn't it so much better? And the inner prostitute that always wants to feel like they're selling their soul or selling something can say, well, I don't need to sell anything in order to feel worthy. I'm worthy enough, right? Just as I am. And yay me. That inner prostitute can actually start to back you up and say, hey, I'm seeing this situation. There's something in it for that person, and unless they kind of get you to do this other thing, they're not gonna be in agreement. But the other thing is they're probably not going to respect you either. So what kind of relationship or work situation would that be in the long run? And then you'd be like, oh my God, yes, I'm not going to get caught in that trap where I always think I have to give something to someone in order to feel worthy in this situation. If it's not about not giving and taking, it's simply about I do not need to do this to feel worthy or to make this choice to be in this relationship. So we feel on a soul level, we start to feel all this maturity, and we no longer wear these archetypes like masks and like labels that I'm just like that. We stop saying things like that, and we just embody them as frequencies. They're fluid, they weave in, they're flexible, they work with us, they grow, they understand, they're free, they're liberated. And so when we do have this, unity consciousness and archetypal liberation, well, here's the multidimensional insight. If we're all connected, if we are the field, then every time one of us integrates an archetype with more balance, we liberate it for all. In 6D, healing is holographic. There's no my healing versus your healing. There's only one field evolving through each of us. So, when the martyr stops bleeding out to save others and becomes the alchemist of her own energy, or when the addict chooses conscious devotion instead of unconscious escape, or when the saboteur learns to trust herself and chooses alignment, well, each of these upgrade shifts the archetype in the collective. It rewires the morphic field, and it makes the higher frequency version of that pattern more accessible to others. So you're not just healing your story, you're tending to the collective soul. And the long-term effects of archetypal evolution are, number one, your ego personality structures become more fluid. So you're no longer the helper or the hero. You simply activate that archetype when it's needed and release it when it's not. You stop clinging to roles and you start collaborating with archetypes. The number two, the collective ascension accelerates as more people harmonize their archetypes. The extremes of polarity become less necessary, and we no longer need the wounded priestesses or the tyrant king to teach us what balance looks like. We simply choose coherence. And voila, new archetypes are born. Just as ancient archetypes were shaped by survival or conquest, new archetypes emerge from a higher frequency birth. And these could be very much some of the new earth archetypes coming online that we see. We might have the grid keeper, which could be responsible for stabilizing frequency and light codes on the planet. The frequency weaver could be responsible for shifting timelines and collective patterns. The quantum beloved could be responsible for embodying multidimensional love beyond form. The Joy Activator could be responsible for carrying levity as sacred medicine. And the Sovereign Child could be innocence fused with creative power. And these are emergent fields, not identities to wear, but they're frequencies to anchor. And they're new ones. They're more evolved ones. And I think it's really important as a fourth thing. Archetypes are allies, not identities. So you're no longer the archetype. You collaborate with it. You invite this in the CR when you're seeking clarity. You channel the lover when opening sacred space. You call in the warrior when protection is needed, and then you let them go. And this is multi-dimensional embodiment. So I'll leave you with this. You're not just healing your inner child. You're not just healing the feminine in your lineage. You are liberating archetypal consciousness itself. Your inner alchemy is contributing to the planetary rebalancing. Every archetype you bring into harmony becomes a clearer channel for love, truth, and soul wisdom. So ask yourself, what archetypes am I ready to evolve? Which roles have I outgrown? What new archetypal frequency is trying to emerge through me? That's a good one, isn't it? Because archetypes aren't static. They are waiting to evolve through you. And you? You are the living rewrite. You are the portal through which collective consciousness transforms. You are not just healing. You are liberating entire energetic lineages. You are rewriting the archetypal fields we've all inherited. You are the sacred disruptor, the evolutionary artist, the living rewrite. So, the next time you find yourself caught in an old identity or pattern, remember, that's just an archetype waiting to evolve. And you are the portal. Thanks everyone. See you next time on Enlightened Conversations. Enjoy your archetypal immersion evolution.